Welcome to C-Suite Strategies, the podcast that takes you inside the minds of top executives across diverse industries. I'm your host, Stacey Sussman, Chief Revenue Officer at RevUp Advisory, and I'm here to uncover the strategies, insights, and hidden wisdom that drive success at the highest levels of business. Each episode will dive into a specific topic crucial to scaling a business, exploring the unique challenges and opportunities that shape growth and success. From innovative revenue models to marketing to cutting-edge leadership techniques, we leave no stone unturned. Whether you're a seasoned C-suite executive or a hungry founder seeking more knowledge, this podcast is your backstage pass to the strategies that separate good companies from great ones. Prepare to challenge your assumptions, expand your horizons, and walk away from each episode with actionable insights that can transform your approach to business. Follow now, C-Suite Strategies, and join us as we uncover the secrets to sustainable business growth, one powerful conversation at a time. Your next big breakthrough might just be a listen away. Hey, folks. We are talking about the topic always near and dear to my heart because I help curate what this is, parenting with purpose, building bonds and navigating modern fatherhood specifically, but I'll add parenthood in general too. We are here with my guest, Greg. And Greg, I'm going to let you give yourself a little intro and tell us what you're up to and what you're all about. And we're going to dive into a really awesome conversation today.
Thanks, Stacey, for having me here. Hi, guys. I'm Greg Garunov. I'm the founder of Millennial Prime, which is a community of dads for dads, basically a support system for men and for dads in this modern, crazy world that we live in.
Greg and I actually know each other in a former life. We were in the media, sales, ad space world. We reconnected through community. Shout out to Darren and Annette at Brand Built. And are here talking. And so this is so fun that we're in a new chapter, both as parents and in entrepreneurship. And I think the first question really kicks it off is finding meaning beyond the job title. And I know, Greg, we've had offline conversations here, but we both left really successful media careers to, I'll say, pursue something more meaningful. And let's just talk about, do you have a specific moment when you realized, I called our media days the New York City hamster wheel, that is like Groundhog's Day over and over again, that you jumped off and decided to do what you're up to now, which is awesome?
It's interesting that you use the word Groundhog's Day because that's pretty much, I don't have a single moment, but I just found myself in like these repeating cycles, no matter which company I worked at, which client I worked at, which campaign I worked on. Yeah, you're advertising a different product, but at the end of the day, the motions just were the same. And after nearly 20 years of just going through the same motions over and over again, I realized that I just don't really care as much about this stuff as I used to. Now, I care a lot about learning, and I think that's the big reason for why I stuck it for nearly 20 years in the ad space is because the space just has changed so much and continues to change. So there's always this incredible source of learning in that industry. But yeah, I just was not getting the fulfillment that I wanted to anymore. The fulfillment that I used to get from those jobs, I just didn't have anymore. And it kind of forced me to look inward, really, and reflect on what is it that I actually enjoy doing. Like, forget about money, forget about time. Like, what do I like to do with my hands on keyboard? Because I am a digital native person. And it's kind of led me to where I am today.
That's so great. I also felt like it was Groundhog's Day. I was in sales, so I like to say the hamster wheel because you never know what fire you're going to have to put out that day. So it's like, what problems are we solving? What are we selling that day? And it just happened over and over again for almost 2 decades for me. So I totally hear you. When I started in sales, I was not a parent. When I sort of closed that chapter and moved to RevUp Advisory, I was a parent of 2. And so let's get into it and talk about this like identity crisis, right? You're in your 20s, you get a job, maybe you have a connection or you got a good grade or you were introduced to someone and you get your first job and you kind of just like go on that path, right? And then I think at some point, whether it's your 20s, 30s, 40s, whatever, you just say, hey, I'm not sure I like the path that I'm on, or how do I live a life with purpose? So give me your POV on what you think here, because this is a good one.
I actually have thought a lot about this when I was doing the self-reflection that I kind of alluded to earlier. And becoming a father was really the big sort of hump for me and forcing me to look at, okay, like, what am I doing with my life? Am I proud of the things that I've built in my life? And for the most part, hell yeah, I got this nice house in the suburbs outside New York City, got nice cars, beautiful, funny, smart wife. My kids are healthy. Like, on paper, I couldn't ask for more. But, what you're hinting at, and I definitely felt that in my mid to late 30s of like this itch that I just couldn't scratch. And I didn't know what it was until, frankly, COVID happened. And that's one of the silver linings of COVID is that a lot of the marketing industry went full remote, which gave me a ton of time at home, a ton of exposure with my kids, a lot more relationship building, that kind of thing. And as every parent says, our kids warm our hearts, but it did so in such a profound way for me that it forced me to take a really long bird's eye view look of what am I doing with my life. I'm middle aged now. And like I said before, I'm definitely proud of the stuff that I've done. But when I think 40 years from now, my 80-year-old self looking back on my 40-year-old self and be like, are you doing everything you can to live a life that's true to you, what you want and what you believe in? And I wasn't doing that. Having kids, becoming fathers really put a focus on that because I looked at that through my 80-year-old self, but through my adult children's eyes. And that's what really set me on the path of like trying to figure out how can I make the most impact in this world? Because that's what's going to make me the most proud. And, I had done something called an Ikigai exercise, which you may or may not be familiar with.
No, I was going to say, how did you figure that out?
Yeah. I tried to just like brute force, like thinking my way through it because I had a lot of success with that sort of approach in my career. But what I learned is that, no, I need some sort of like framing and structure to help me out here. And so I did this exercise, and just for the viewers, Ikigai is basically discovering your life purpose. It's the intersection of things that you care passionately about, what the world needs, and how you can make a living out of it. It's the intersection of those things. And I actually did a few versions of it. And my very first version of it was more so landing on writing and design. Because from the framing of like, what do I like doing? And I was thinking for work because I was looking to disconnect from a W-2, career and kind of start my own venture. And I did that for like 2-3 months with building my own personal brand for millennial dads in particular. And what I learned just going through that process early on for myself is that it feels like work to write for other people's stuff, which sounds basic, but like I kind of like landed. I'm like, okay, it does feel like work, but writing about dads and parenting and how to support and help other dads that might be struggling and suffering in silence, none of that feels like work to me. And so I did a second Ikigai exercise, and what I landed on was this concept of community. Really, what it started as coaching. But after I joined a couple communities like Darren and Matt's brand built, and this shows the power of relationships and community, just reconnecting after 10 years. It's so cool, by the way. My version 3 of my Ikigai was building a community for millennial dads, because that will give the ability for me to connect with dads, but more importantly, for dads to connect with each other. And my original idea and my original thesis for Millennial Prime didn't have that component. But once I kind of landed there, I'm like, this is exactly what makes sense. And this is what I want to do for the rest of my life, really.
I know how you feel. The quote that says, if you do what you love, you'll never work a day in your life. And when I was in media sales, I was like, that is such a BS quote. You just have to work and make money. And that's just like this dreamer stuff over here. And I realized when I stepped into Rev Up Advisory and owning this growth consultancy that it's true. When you find what you're really passionate about and you find your meaning and your purpose, you can make money, but also be passionate about what you do every day. And so I'm so excited that you started this and you're doing this, because I don't think everyone will ever be able to start and achieve that. And I don't even think everyone will be able to even realize that, right? Like I can jump off the hamster wheel and I can do something else. I read an article on LinkedIn today about the concept of golden handcuffs. And so it's this idea that you're in corporate, and this person was talking specifically about partner track at the big four, like a McKinsey or something. And you become so ingrained in your identity of I'm on partner track and I'm going to make partner and then I'm going to have partner. And then that comes with upgrades, I'll say, in your lifestyle. But then as you upgrade your lifestyle, you want more and more of it. And nothing becomes enough, really, what this person was saying at the end of the day. Because if you're not living a meaningful and purposeful life at the end of the day, it's just never fulfilling because you're always climbing, but you're not actually achieving. And I just was like, oh, this is a great thing to talk about on the podcast today because I don't think everyone even finds their purpose. And I have not familiar with the Icky Guide, so I'd love a copy of a link or something. And I'd like to put that in the show notes, so that would be cool.
Yeah, just one quick comment on what you just said, just to riff on it a little bit. I've read this line recently that got me thinking a little bit, and I want to explore it for just a minute with you because it connects to what we're talking about here. And it's this concept of a salary is in modern times one of the most dangerous things. And I'm like, wait, what? Like security, safety? Like, what does that mean? And what my definition of that, what that means when I started to really, explore that and deep dive on it is that the 9 to 5 grind, which is really, it's not 8 hours, it's longer than that. It's typically 60 to 80 hours for high achievers. It sucks up all your time, but more importantly, it sucks up the energy in your mind, your attention, and it forces you down this lane that society has put in front of you, which may or may not be the lane that you want to be in your life. It could be, and that's great if it is.
Right.
But I think for a lot of people, it isn't. And that's the part that makes it dangerous. And the further down you go down that line, the stronger those golden handcuffs become, and the harder it is to go backwards to try to mow your own path. And when I coach my dad clients, that is a big topic. It doesn't apply to just work. It really applies to anything in life.
No, it's everything. Yeah. I love that. Yeah. I mean, it was just so on point. I saw this in corporate, I'll say just from my opinion and from my mom friends that are high achievers, that you become so dependent on the paycheck, you become so complacent that you almost sacrifice your happiness at the end of the day for that paycheck. And this guy gave an example, like with kids, you understand you have a mortgage and you have bills to pay. And so you feel like you can't take the risk at the end of the day because you have tangible things that are coming at you every month and are need attention. But it's society saying, this is the path that you should take. And it's the harder path sometimes too. But the reward, I think, is there. And if you're looking to live a more purposeful life, you really got to recalibrate and say, what do I want out of life versus what did my parents tell me to do? I'm sure you have some of those good, like, save for a rainy day, put money under the mattress, go to college, all this stuff. And just like those lines are just so blurred these days with the way the world works.
Yeah. And, over the last couple of years with so many companies doing layoffs and whatnot, it's not as safe choice as it used to be. The dynamics are different. And I'm not saying everyone should go out and start their own venture because it's very challenging and it's not for everybody. But I do encourage people to think about their life path in a way that's not just default autopilot.
Yeah. I have friends that are in the C-suite or really senior management. What I'm seeing, they're like, I might be out of a job because they're so ahead in their career and such high achievers that they see the larger picture of these companies and they're like, I don't know if like the role that I have is going to be there anymore. So, and then what do you do when you're in your 30s, 40s, 50s and you're not looking to retire, but you still need to be senior? And so they're like, what do you do with all your days or what's your next move? And I think a lot of my friends are in okay, my next move needs to really be something I enjoy or something I'm respected or I'm paid handsomely. Like so many things come up for them. Your millennial dad coaching clients and community, like what are some of the things they grapple with? I'd like to hear some of the patterns you're constantly hearing. Let's bring it to life.
Yeah, there's like 3 major buckets of things that dads struggle with. One, there is a massive loneliness epidemic going on. at least in the US. I'm not sure of like global numbers, but in Western society, and I think COVID and remote work has exacerbated that, but we're already kind of on that track. So I think that's why I really gravitated towards, and the concept of community really clicked with me for Millennial Prime, because I'm not looking to check boxes. I'm looking to actually impact real people's lives. And a lot of dads are suffering in silence, being lonely, and they're not sharing that they're lonely.
And what are they lonely about? Because they're dads, they have families, they have a career typically. Like, what's the loneliness stemming from, if we can get more specific?
I love that you asked that follow-up question, because it's not an answer that I think a lot of people and dads immediately go to, but it's really a loss of sense of self.
Yes.
What we were talking about earlier of this track of, going in the corporate world and going on these paths society has set out for us. Again, that may be closely aligned with who we want to be and living authentic lives, but I think for most people it isn't. And the further away we get from our core self, that's where the actual messaging and the verbiage of Millennial Prime comes from. It's from the concept of professional athletes that are in the prime of their careers, generally between the ages of 25 and 35. But for non-athletes, it's different. For regular people, it's a lot more mental, and it's less about age and more about mindset and habits and lifestyle that lead to the prime of our lives, to unlock this prime version of ourselves. And I think the loneliness in particular is a huge stressor. It's a huge distraction. It numbs us from pursuing what that prime state even looks like for ourselves. And it looks different for everyone. This is like personal transformation work that I work on with my clients. But I found myself lonely a few years back, and it sucks. And no amount of like conversations that I would have with people made me feel better about it. And what I realized after doing some reflective work on myself is the reason that I was not getting no longer lonely and talking to people was because it was within me. It was inside my own mind.
Oh, this is a big one, Greg. So once they sort of realize that, I feel like they realize they need to work on themselves, because there's all these outside factors and environmental and childhood and all these other things that you can control, probably most you can't control, I'll say. And then I always think it comes back to working on yourself. I think that's a huge piece. So do you then kind of coach and direct them as to what they can do? And I'll say, I've explored this concept of like masculine and feminine energy. I don't know if this comes up in your coaching. And so I've explored, okay, where do I sit more in my masculine energy or feminine energy? And then what are modalities and things that I can do to explore these different energies and to be like, I would say like more imbalanced, of like figuring out who I am, showing up as my best self. And then the funny thing that happens is not only do you gain that sense, feel probably a lot less lonely, but you also show up as a better person and employee at the end of the day. And so it has this profound effect. So I'm curious what you're thinking, because I've spent a lot of time this year thinking about this. And now, a word from our sponsor, RevUp Advisory. At RevUp Advisory, we're passionate about transforming businesses. Most B2B companies struggle with scaling, but with us, you're guaranteed to maximize your marketing and sales growth, because it's literally all we do every day. We know you've already accomplished some amazing things, but we also know what got you here won't get you to where you want to go. When the messy middle of scaling feels overwhelming, we dive in, we clean it up, and we create true business transformation. Our job is to handle the nitty-gritty details that get you there, allowing you to focus on the bigger picture. Led by Stacy Sussman, with over 25 years of expertise in sales, marketing, and operations, our team of business strategists and technical wizards are ready to carve the right growth path forward for your company. Ready to rev up your business? Contact Stacy Sussman at RevUp Advisory today.
Yeah, the concept of masculinity is a huge topic that we talk about. I try to stay away from things that are like male versus female, because we as human beings we tend to have biases in our minds based on our own just personal experiences. So when we talk about feminine or masculine energy, it's based on what we were exposed to living our lives and maybe some knowledge that we picked up, some objective knowledge too. But typically in these conversations, which tend to become very personal, we tend to gravitate towards our personal experiences there, which may not be objectively masculine or objectively
Yep.
feminine. So I generally try to stay away from that. But with all of that said, there's a reason for why masculinity is thought of in the way that it is. And it is because of history. It is because of the personal interactions that we've had, right? So while I say that, it's impossible to not acknowledge that fact.
Right.
But what I will say is that what I like to focus on is the reality, the practical shift that we've experienced, not just in the last few years, but in the last few decades, I would say. And that is, there is a lot more expectation from everyone, from not just men or female, for men to be more than
Right.
what we were. And what that means is different things for different people. What that means for Millennial Prime and the way that I coach my clients is that I think it's a marker of strength to admit you don't know something. I think it's much harder to truly admit that than to just scoff at something and move on to something else. To really sit with inadequacy, that shit is hard. It is not easy. And then to go do something and pursue help can be even harder. But the first step is really just admitting that you need help.
The realization.
Yeah, because it forces you to admit to yourself that you might be lacking in something. And that doesn't feel great. But you really can't grow as a person, cannot grow as a father, can't grow as a man until you really admit to yourself that, hey, maybe I'm not so good in this one particular area. Which is, by the way, completely normal because we're human beings. Like,
We don't know everything.
listen, there's value in stoicism. I'm a big Greek philosophy person. I've gravitated towards that from a young age. Absolutely. There's value in stoicism and conserving your core energy and only giving it out to where you want to give it out. Absolutely. But I think that that word stoicism, that concept has grown into just shutting down. And it's not shutting down. Shutting down is easy. Engaging with other people, with yourself, that is hard. That takes strength. That's modern masculinity, I think.
Yeah. So deep. I would say jumping to childhood. Because I feel like, you're saying there's a lot of personal moments that come up. And I'll just, from my opinion, it's when you become a parent, and I have 2 kids, and you do too, correct?
Yeah, 2 kids.
Yep. So it's you have a playbook, I'll guess, in your head because you grew up with a certain way, whether you had grandparents, caregivers, 1 parent, 2 parents, whatever. You sort of have this playbook in your head, but there is no playbook to being a parent. And I think the times have changed. I think we're around the same age, what our parents taught us versus where the world is today. It's just so different. I personally read a ton of parenting books about specific subject matters based on what I think my kids need, because I just want to hear different PhD, professor, scientists, etc.'s opinions on this, because I'm I don't have all the answers. I'm an AB, always learning kind of person. So I'm always have a nose in a book, listen to Audible in the car. But I do feel you draw on what you can learn and what you can read, and then you draw on childhood. So just talk to me about sort of the intersection and what your thoughts are there.
Yeah, this is a big topic that a lot of my childless friends ask me about, is how do you balance what people's preconceived notions in parenting are
Yep.
versus the reality of parenting, of your personal experience with your own kids, compared to this work that I'm doing.
Yeah.
It's this triangle.
And it's hard.
Yeah, when I first got these questions, I was it really made me think, because I didn't feel great about any answer that I had. But, thankfully time has passed and I've had some time to think through it and refine it, because it is an important topic. Because I have seen some of my dads resist certain aspects of what modern parenting looks like. And that's totally fine. Parenting is a unique experience. It's very personal. There is a huge element of subjectivity in it. But what I would say is that over the last 30 years in particular, there's been so many advancement in overall psychology and the way that human beings and our minds work. and much more specifically, child psychology over the last 20 years. There's been so many more advancements in evidence-based empirical studies that comparing control and test groups, and which is difficult to do with humans, and especially kids.
Very hard when they're very young.
Yeah. In full disclosure, I'm not a PhD. I don't have a master's degree in anything. I'm just a person who's passionate about being a dad, about being a parent. I have 20 years marketing experience, so I feel like I have the ability to research the stuff and storytell it in a way that lands with people. And yeah, I inject some of my own personal thinking in it for sure, because I have personal experience of being a dad, and I think I'm a good dad. My kids are thriving. So with all of that said, there isn't objectivity with certain things. And I'd
Yep.
say if I were to summarize it for a podcast here, a lot of it has to do with two things. One, kids are kids, and you have to remember that. You have to approach them in a way that you cannot approach grown-ups because their brains are fundamentally different. This is the second bucket. You can't make them feel like they're different
Yeah.
just because they're kids. They are people too, with very similar feelings that you and I feel on a daily basis.
We're human beings.
But much more intensely.
Yeah.
So think about that for a second. I think a lot of parents get tripped up in, I don't want to say catering because that's not the right word, but like going too far with kids' attributes and kids' characteristics. And they forget to learn who the human being is that's in front of them.
I love that.
And that was one of the most profound things when I became a father. And this might sound basic, but it was profound for me in that I just kind of assumed that like the parent-child relationship just organically happens. And I haven't found that to be the case in real life. You have to work at the relationship just like any other relationship. In fact, more so, right?
Yeah.
And I think when I talk to dads, some people think it's basic, others don't. I think there's some very basic things about parenting and dadding that a lot of dads are just not aware of when they become dads. And that's what I'm looking to change, is that there's all this information out here. And like I said, I'm not a PhD. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a doctor. But I have a knack for pulling out information and telling you in a way that lands and that actually breaks through some mental constructs that people have. And that's what I'm all about, is about injecting that knowledge that is seemingly very common sense. And again, not to compare men and women, but for a lot of moms, it seems more common sense than it does for dads. And I'm looking to change that.
Yeah, I love that. I mean, doing good in the world. I feel like the role of the dad has changed. I mean, even I'm thinking of my children. I have a boy and I have a girl. I have to speak to them in different ways. I have two kids that have big feelings. And so the way maybe someone else without big feelings talks to a big feeling kid, and if I'm talking gibberish, it's just kids that have heightened emotions at the end of the day. They go from very neutral to very hot really quickly. There's just different ways to deal with them and different ways to talk to them. I don't go too far down that they're kids and they're two and you can only talk to them a certain way. I always talk to them as adults, but I feel like there's, a way to talk to them because at the end of the day, their brain is still evolving really until like a certain age. And I want to point out the idea of just because you had the kid doesn't mean the kid automatically loves you and loves spending time with you. I feel like this old adage of like the grandparents, it's like, oh, they never call me. Like my kids aren't big like phone people. I'm like, they're 5, they're 9.
Yeah.
Like they're not that big on like talking on the phone. They're more like see you in person, present with you, spend time with you. So I was like, when you see them, you got to make the most of it. And I feel like I spend a lot of time with my kids because at the end of the day, those are the core memories that they're going to remember when they're 40, 50, 60, 80, that their parents showed up for their play or they went to their soccer game or they went to their football game. Not so much like, I don't know, on a Tuesday, maybe my dad didn't do homework with me. Maybe if it's every week, he'll remember that. But those one-off events, I think they won't remember as much as those core memories. And so I'm always trying to think of how can I spend time with them because my daughter is getting to that tween teenage. At some point, she's just not going to want to spend all her time with me.
Yeah. And one of the big things that I provide to my community are resources for activities to do by different age groups.
I love that.
Because I found myself researching and searching for just stuff to do when my wife was busy. And I'm like, why is this so hard?
Dads aren't good at this, I would say.
Yeah. And I was like, I don't understand. Why is this so difficult? And where I landed on was that there's just not as many resources available for dads as there are for moms. There's some regional websites. I live in Connecticut, and there's Mommy Poppins, which is updated like very frequently, which is great. But I don't think it's a very well-known site. Also, the name Mommy Poppins, a lot of moms know, but not dads.
Yeah.
So that's the big thing that I'm looking to do is save my dad clients time. And there's two primary things. One is just providing literally like, here's a list of stuff you could do. Pick one that your kid will gravitate towards. And it's like super easy and it saves hours, I think, per week for dads. The other thing is that it's this concept of like doing less is more, or like doing less stuff has more impact. So when you're like frantically moving from one thing to the next, researching and then doing and then feeding your kid and all this stuff, like, first of all, it's stressful and that's not amazing. And you're not present. It takes you away from that connection building opportunity with your kid.
Yeah.
Because those opportunities, there's a lot of them every day, but they're very easy to just get distracted by the normal everyday motions of life. So in addition to the resources that I look to provide to the community, I'm constantly coaching dads on, you got to prioritize every day, every week, every month, every year, things that are close to your core values and what you believe on, your core memories that you mentioned earlier. It's much easier to connect with your kids and not be this frantic person when you have prioritized certain things that align with who you want to be as an authentic person, dad, man. And it makes it easy to just say no to all the stuff and focus on your kid. Your kid is the one that's going to remember, to your earlier point, these interactions. Your boss, your coworker, your friend, like they won't remember 20 years from now.
You canceled on a Tuesday.
Yeah. Yeah. And I go back to that a lot in my own mind with my own kids. And I go back to that a lot with coaching my dad clients as well. Is that think about what your kids are going to think about 20 or 30 years from now. And is what you're doing right now, is that going to make them feel good or not? And for me, that's the biggest motivator that I've ever had in my life.
I love that. I go on what I call weekend adventures with my kids. So maybe I'm just better at it because I'm a mom, but I would say I get a lot of my inspiration from Instagram. I get served a lot of ads. So, I mean, this past weekend, we drove somewhere. I had the whole day planned in my head. So just going on your point is like, we woke up, it was a Sunday. I was like, what are we going to do today after a holiday? And I was like, in my head, we're going to go here, we're going to go to breakfast, and then we're going to go ice skating, and then we're going to go and get the car washed, and that's a whole activity. And then we're going to go to this store, and then we're going to come home. And some other fun stuff pop up along the way. But I'll say I like leave the house with like a plan and a purpose of what we're going to do. And I call it like our surprise adventures day. So I have the whole day sort of planned out. But it just like adds this element of excitement that they're like, where are we going? Where are we going? I'm like, I don't know. And it's just like fun.
Yeah, my wife is similar. She has mom brain. She's thinking of the 50 to-do lists, similar to how you're describing at any moment of the day. One of the topics that comes up in the community is like, well, I'm not looking to have dads become more like moms. Like that's not the vibe. What I'm helping dads with, in addition to the dadding and the self-care, is also become better partners, because it is stressful to think about a million things in your head constantly. I acknowledge that.
The mental load is real.
Yeah, it really is. And I'm not advising my dads to start to think about 50 million things every day either. But you got to help your partner out with some of this stuff. And asking them to tell you what to do is a little helpful, but not that much. You got to take the initiative and actually recognize that your kid, oh, hey, the laundry, they're out of jammies today. Like they literally don't have jammies to wear tonight. Maybe I should just put a load of laundry in. Oh, hey, my kid is hungry. Like, don't just call mom and give them a snack. Like, a lot of this stuff is so super easy.
Very basic, but maybe not intuitive, I'll say.
But not intuitive. Yeah, that's a good point. It's also super easy to get just distracted by everyday things. I mean, the phone is so terrible. And this is a magical device, but it's terrible for parenting.
Yeah.
It takes you out of the interaction that you have with your child and takes attention away from them. And there's multiple tactics and strategies to reduce phone time. That is a big topic of mine.
That is a huge topic. We're not going to get into that today, but I will say we have enlisted a no iPad during the week rule at my house. And we started that over the summer, and it has drastically changed for the better, the family dynamic. And so they get the iPads on the weekends, but then it becomes, I don't want to go anywhere on the weekends because now I have my iPad. So it's great. And it also is double-edged sword. But this has been great. We're going to wrap the podcast here today. But how can people get in touch with you? How can people find you? How can they join your community?
Yeah, absolutely. So my LinkedIn profile is a central hub for all the content that I publish and really what I'm about. You can get a taste of who I am and what I do on my LinkedIn profile. I do have a website as well, millennialprime.com, and there's link outs there to resources and to the actual community that you can join that I use a platform for. But you can also reach out to me directly on LinkedIn DM or greg@millennialprime.com. It's relatively easy. I'm super responsive. And like I said before, I'm a digital native. That's also the other reason why I got onto this track is that like I'm on the internet all day anyway. It's like part of my default.
Yep.
I might as well do something productive and impactful with it.
Love it. And I love seeing your growth and evolution. And I think we need more people like you championing the modern dads, modern parenting. So I applaud you for all your efforts. So thank you. And thank you for coming today.
Stacey, thank you so much. I really value our friendship here. And it's so amazing to be on here chatting with you about this today.
You're welcome. As we wrap up this episode of C-Suite Strategies, I want to express my sincere gratitude to you, our listeners, for tuning in and engaging with our podcast. Your commitment to business growth and operational excellence is what drives this podcast forward. A special thank you to our guests today for sharing their valuable business insights and experience. Your wisdom is a gift to our audience, and we're honored to have had you on our show today. If you enjoyed this episode, we'd be thrilled if you follow and subscribe to the podcast. Your help supports us to reach more ambitious business leaders just like you. And if you didn't enjoy it, well, I guess I'll see you never. This is your host, Stacey Sussman, Chief Revenue Officer at RevUp Advisory, signing off.